Our final speaker today is Professor Donna Cross. Now, Professor Donna Cross is a Winthrop professor with the Faculty of Medicine, Dentistry and Health Science at the University of Western Australia, working from the affiliated Telethon Kids Institute. As importantly to me, Donna is also one of our ambassadors for the Commission for Children and Young People. We have 13 ambassadors, all prominent West Australians, and Donna is one of those. So I would certainly welcome Donna. Her work in particular around research evidence, moving research evidence into policy and practice, and bridging the gap between university research and school and community programs is world-class. So please welcome Donna Cross.
There's nothing worse than following experts. And as we sit here as older people trying to cope with the online environment, I'm reminded of that quote of traps for old players, and that's largely what I'm going to be talking about tonight, is what young people have told us through our research are issues of greatest concern to them. And so I'm really reporting what Jeremy and Giselle and 68 other young people have told us over a series of a number of days where they spoke to us directly, but then also a series of surveys and ongoing consultation with young people to make sure that we're portraying the sorts of things that they think are important. So I thought you might like to know that too. But before I show you my first slide, I'd like to remind you that when you're feeling stressed, one of the most important things you can do is to have a big stretch and a stand-up. And I'm thinking after this long sitting there, you're not necessarily stressed, but you're more likely to be going off to sleep. So could I just ask if you could have a stand and make yourself as big as you can in the spot? Thank you, Jeremy. When you're ready, if you don't mind having a seat. Now, there really is a fine body of research that argues that the larger you make yourself, the more you can reduce your levels of stress. So before you go for one of those really tricky interviews, go and hide in a toilet cubicle or something and do a big stretch. But I have an ulterior motive, because you're going to see by my next slide why I need you to be awake. And this is a really important slide and forms the basis of a lot of the work that we do at Telethon Kids Institute, not only looking at cyber safety, but looking at the well-being of young people generally. And this slide is really about the conversation that we need to be having with our children, the other conversation that we need to be having. So now you can see why I needed you to stretch. Now, this is the magic formula. If you think, if I could create the perfect child, and I think as a parent, I only have 2 children, but the one thing that I'd love to do is to give my children the best opportunity as much as I can be in control of that. And that's what this slide is saying. To get to that red box in the top corner, which are the attributes that years and years of research have demonstrated that children who have these capacities, people like Jeremy and Giselle, who have a high level of personal achievement to whatever they can achieve, they have good social competence and they have emotional resilience. If our children can demonstrate those qualities, they're best likely to have the success that they deserve. And what the rest of this diagram is showing you, over the life course, so from birth onwards, what are the major predictors of hitting that box? So as a parent, if you wanted to make sure that your children could portray those qualities, you'd want to be trying to make sure that some of these things that you probably can't read from the back of the room, but I'll highlight them for you, make the most difference. Now, what's really important in this diagram is that there are thousands of things that lead to that red box. It's these things that give the greatest amount of variance, so the things that contribute most to hitting that box. And amongst these, some of them are even more powerful than others, and I'm going to highlight a few of those. First up, positive interaction with peers. So having the opportunity to interact on a regular basis, talking and having conversations, having role models around the modelling pro-social behaviour are fundamental to the success of our children. People don't lose jobs necessarily because they don't know the content of what they're doing. Often it's because they can't get along with people. So relationship skills are fundamental, and the best way to learn that is through practice and through constant interaction. So online environments provide that. There is harms, of course, but they provide this amazing opportunity for young people to be more connected than we've ever seen before. And I don't mean connected by wireless technology, I mean connected because they're talking to their friends. I also grew up in the 70s, and my hair, and I did have a perm, I'll add that as well, oh my goodness. And in my day, and I'm sure many of you in the audience are the same, there was a phone in the kitchen, it was attached to the wall, all of my family were in the room. There wasn't a chance I could have a private conversation with anybody that I cared about. So I didn't have the opportunity other than at school or when I was face to face with my friends. But young people are regularly talking to each other, checking on them on regular, perhaps for parents, maybe a little bit too regularly, but in any case, they do have a much stronger connection. Other things here, like positive connection to adults. Perhaps we're not giving our children as many opportunities to meet other adults as maybe our parents gave us. Perhaps as parents we communicate with our friends more in online environments and less so face-to-face. So our children have fewer opportunities to watch the way that we interact. And social learning is very much about observation, reinforcement and being in the right environments, but observing how that looks. So positive interaction with adults is really important. Not only for you as parents, but also your aunts and uncles and teachers and professionals in the community. So every time you reach out and act as a coach, take on those kinds of roles, you're contributing enormously to the mental health and the likelihood of those young people you have contact with reaching that red box. Obviously, having the ability to regulate their emotions and having success in communication is very important as well, and most importantly, having parents who are highly responsive. So there's a lot in this diagram, but what I really would like to emphasise is that the ability for young people to relate well to each other and to share experiences and to observe and learn to be pro-social is really key. So relationships are the basis for that. So when we think about connectedness or our ability to get along well with each other, how protective is it? Enormously protective. Not only our connectedness to our parents, but also connectedness to social institutions. And given our most important currently social institution in society is schools, that too becomes a really important part of what we can do to enhance children's development. Now, when we think about children's mental health in an online context, we think about how backward perhaps we are as adults in understanding the technology that young people are using, hence our need for people like Jeremy and Giselle to help us. But when you look at what Ofcom is saying about what an average 45-year-old knows relative to a 6-year-old, we're a fair bit behind, and looking at when do you hit your digital peak. If you've got a 14 or 15-year-old in your family, you're very lucky. They'll start to decline soon after that age. I have a 14-year-old currently and a 20-year-old. So the 20-year-old's no use to me anymore, but the 14-year-old is fabulous. And this becomes challenging because you think about, I've had many of these messages sent to me by my children. And often I've got it very wrong. For example, I'm often late picking up my children from school, and this one day I sent a message saying I'm on time. But I ended my message, don't ever use technology that you don't know the full power of. I ended it with LOL. Now, of course, I thought I was ending it with lots of love, but I wasn't, was I? No, laugh out loud. So my children thought, of course, Mum's never on time, so off they wandered. And needless to say, I was pleased to find a website called Lingo to Word, and Lingo to Word is the perfect translator of all urban language and others, and it'll translate these things for you, and it will also translate emojis and GIFs and all those other amazing memes and things that young people use, and will even tell you what those things are. So in case you were worried that you didn't know what they are, I love SWAC, of course, sealed with a kiss. I'm hoping that I get those often, from my children, of course. But we need to be on top of what young people are doing. We need to understand that. And you heard Giselle say earlier on that the best way to support your children is to know what they're doing and understand it. And your kids love teaching you. It's wonderful that they know something more than we do, and giving them the opportunity to share that with us is probably one of the most exciting opportunities for us because we develop those skills, but also give them great confidence in the sorts of things that they know. So when you think about your own cyber savviness, how cyber savvy are you? How would you rate yourself on a score of 1 to 10? You'll know where you are. I hope in the final 10, 12 minutes I have with you tonight to give you a few things that might help you move along that continuum just a little bit further. And I'd like to do it focusing on an issue that young people said to us was the most important to them. And unfortunately, there were 3 issues that all started with C. I'm always nervous in WA when I come up with a triple C algorithm. Jane, you won't quite get that as well as everyone else in the audience, but I'll explain it to you later. But the C that young people said was most important to them, and I didn't put it last intentionally, is this confidentiality. And not just because young people like to have privacy and they don't like to share everything that they're doing online, but often they say that they don't know how much of what they're doing online isn't private. And that in their great use of the online environment, sometimes they don't realise the implications of that. And the main reason for that is because young people's prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed. In fact, there's some recent research that says that in women, this front section of their brain continues to grow until about 22 years of age, and for men, until age 31. Of course, the women in the room are saying that explains a lot. It's very small growth that happens in that last 10 years. Because so much of it has already happened. I'm really in trouble, I'm sorry. So when we think about making decisions, young people are missing a big part of their brain that is helping them to make decisions and really think through consequences. So when you say to your children, didn't you think about that before you did it? Well, actually they can't, particularly if they're in the very early stages of puberty. In fact, most of what they know is from memory, because we've told them, if you do that, this will happen. They don't have the capacity yet to be able to go, okay, if that happened, that might happen next, and then these things could happen. It's quite a slow process. And in fact, at the same time, as Jane mentioned, you've got things like the hippocampus and the amygdala, which is this back part of the brain in the limbic system, which is driving emotion forward at 100 miles an hour. And that's creating very emotional responses. So when Jeremy said, sometimes young people can be moody, the answer is it's not their fault, because they've got this amazing limbic system that's going like crazy with no brakes to slow it down and really think through the consequences. So a very challenging environment, and you put all of that brain development online, and it creates some good challenges. When you think about the amount of use, so if we were thinking about loss of privacy or confidentiality, one of the issues is just scale, the amount of stuff that goes on online. You think about, maybe if you made a mistake 1 in a million times, gosh, that's pretty rare, and I know I've made it more often than that, but if you think about that just as a rare event, that happens 500 times a day on Twitter. When you look at how many tweets are occurring, and particularly the rate of use of a site like Twitter, in January 2009, you can see there are about 2 million tweets per day, and some data that I had from 2015 said that there were 500 million tweets per day, which was 9,000 new tweets every second. So the likelihood of mistakes, just because so much is going on, is pretty high. So I need to be obviously conscious of that. And there are so many sites that young people go to. And in these wonderful forums that we had with young people, they said these are the sorts of places that they go. And you may have had your children talk to you about some of these sites. Some of them are nicer than others. Some maybe encourage behaviours where young people are anonymous. Sites like Kik may have some benefit, but they're probably not such good sites. Whereas others, Facebook and Instagram, actually not bad relative to some of the others, and there's opportunities for young people to set privacy settings and to organise their friends so that they can share things. It's just showing them how to do it that can be the challenge. When we think about loss of privacy, there's another way that young people lose privacy beyond scale, and that's just because of the context they're having in that environment. And particularly, forgive the terms, these are words that young people told us, frenemies and randoms. Frenemies are people who know enough about you that they can use that information against you. So typically when young people are harmed online by their contacts, it's someone who they know. They may not know who it is, but they know enough about, they can see that that person knows enough about them that they must know them, that they're in their social circle somewhere. So they call those people frenemies. And randoms are strangers, the people who they might just agree because they want to have 4,700 friends in Facebook or wherever they might be going. But what's challenging for us as parents is how conscientious young people are at collecting randoms. And in the work that we've been doing, young people said they're more likely to accept a random when they're using Instagram, for example, than when they're using Facebook. In Facebook, their random, or their friends, are called friends. In Instagram, they're called followers. And young people tell us that it seems like it's okay to have more followers because then they'll be like Kim Kardashian and have all of those followers, and I'll be able to make lots of money as a result of that because I'll have this following. So they're more willing to accept randoms. So as parents, we need to have conversations about randoms and the likelihood of sharing information with people that they don't know and what kinds of information they share, which is why we built the app that we described just a little moment ago. Another loss of privacy is through downloading. I'm sure you know that if it's free, you're not the customer, you're the product. If it's free, you're not the customer, you're the product. So why are all these social media sites free? Because they want to collect information about you so they can then sell that information on. So, of course, things like Facebook are going to leak if you only accept the factory settings. You need to set them yourself so that you can make sure that they're safe. And sites like the ones that Jane just provided, such as the site that's been set up by the E-Commissioner, has some amazing tutorials for parents to sit down with their children and work out how to set the privacy settings so that they really are as tight as Facebook will allow by the way that it's built. And you can look at things that you download, and I've just got the question here of all the apps, and I saw a lot of people raise their hand earlier on, that you've downloaded to your phone. Are you aware that many of these apps, about a quarter of them, take information out of your phone? If it's free, you're not the customer, you're the product. So being aware of what you download is also a means of protecting your privacy. They're having conversations with your children about what they download and why they're downloading it, and do they really need it. Before I leave that site, that little note at the bottom, please rob me, isn't a message tonight for you to know my home is empty and you should go there. But in fact, some terribly clever but highly wicked people have collected the tweets or the Facebook messages of people that indicate, yes, I'm in Rome and having a wonderful time, here are all my photographs, which of course is indicating that their house is empty. And often many of the photos that they've uploaded are geotagged. So if you've sent or posted a picture of your dog in your front yard saying this is my new dog at my home, or it's obvious that it's your home, if you've got geotagging turned on, if someone clicks onto that photograph, they can see the GPS location of your house. So there's a lot of information that we give out as a result of perhaps not understanding what that information is telling somebody who might use it online. I'm moving on, Colin. So there's lots of sites, again, you might be accessing that are indeed harvesting information about you and leading to that loss of privacy. And the last area that young people talked about a lot is this loss of privacy through uploading. So we've talked about downloading, we've talked about contacts, we've talked about the different sites that you might use and how often you use them. But this one's about the sorts of things that you might put on your phone. And that's why students like Giselle and Jeremy helped us to develop an app to talk about young people's uploading of photographs. Already we've had the conversation about GPS information being included in photographs, but obviously there's a lot of other content that's in photographs that could lead to a young person losing privacy or losing confidentiality. And this is a snapshot of an older phone. I only put that up here because most adults have old phones, that we don't have the new ones like our children do, so chances are your phone looks like this, as mine does, in which case there is a switch in settings called location services, and when you turn that off, so it turns off your geotagging on your photographs. In more modern phones, geotagging has its own button under settings and under location services where you can turn that off. But of course you can Google to find out how do I turn off geotagging on my children's phones, because that should be a priority, and it will tell you exactly how to do it for the phone type that you have. So it's really important that we have conversations with our children about uploading. What are they putting online, and how is that leading to their loss of privacy? So this amazing app that is now in the App Store, and it's for iPhones and Android, this app is called Image Up. It's one word. It's free, of course, because we want as much people to access it as possible. This particular app is what we would call an in-the-moment piece of education. So our research is testing some resources to help parents understand the sharing of images, and we can include the website for that in the information that's passed out from this seminar. We have classroom resources for teachers to support children with the decisions that they make in what sorts of images they upload. And we can talk to children and educate. As Jane said, education isn't enough. In the moment when they've taken a photograph and they're now about to send it to all of their friends and randoms in their social networking sites, or wherever it is that they might be sending it, that's the point when they get a little bit more information that might encourage them to think more deeply, particularly given that their prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed. So this app, if I was using it right now, I'd take a photograph of all of you and I would take it in my app. And that app now allows me to send that photograph of you. Of course, I'd have all your permissions because I wouldn't send a photograph of you without doing that, to all of my social networking sites pretty much in one sweep. Well, not all of them, but the ones that are most commonly used. Now you might say that sounds pretty counterintuitive. Why would you encourage young people to send an image to every single site that they have in one move? Before this app, they'd have to open Facebook and send it to their Facebook site, open Instagram and send it to their Instagram site. The reason we did this is we wanted to capture them every time they made a decision about what images they'd share. So this app, if you load it on your children's phone, will help them send off their messages, but at the time that they are uploading a photograph or a tagged photograph or even a text message, and they press send, so they've taken a photograph and I've sent it. My phone is holding the photograph with this app, so it sits in the phone, and then young people see, or whoever using it, you might use it as well, 10 seconds of a very quick message of what young people say to themselves after they've sent an image, like, oh gosh, what if Dad sees that? But in very amusing and animated ways. Young people said 10 seconds is all you've got. You've got to get the message across quickly. So that 10-second message comes across, and then they're asked again, they're prompted, are you sure you want to send this image? And of course they can press yes, and off it goes. So what it's doing is right at the time when I'm loading an image, it's reminding me and making me think about what I should do, and it's using the language and ideas of young people like Giselle and Jeremy. And this was their idea. They said this is what we would use and that we think it would be very helpful. So we're testing it now to see whether or not it's effective. We're in the final stages. And I'd like to acknowledge Mel Epstein, who's in the audience, who is the director of this project and who's led the huge amount of work that sits around this. Thanks, Mel. So you can access this app if you care. And there are lots of other ways that we can protect ourselves with what we upload, and one of them is by doing a digital reputation search. You may do this with your children, but I encourage you to do it yourself. Perhaps do it as often as you wash your car. You know how often you wash your car. I washed mine this weekend, and I have to tell you, it's been a while. So a digital reputation search uses lots of different search engines to do it. So most of you probably use Google or maybe a few other common search engines. You'll see there's some not so common search engines up here, and you can imagine that these wouldn't search as nicely as Google. Google is a nice search engine that searches in certain ways. Websites like PQ and Dogpile search in ways that might draw up photographs that are online, information that's online that isn't quite so nice, and might put it more to the top of the pile. As you know, things that come up in a certain order. So we encourage young people, and they have helped us in identifying these sites, to do regular digital reputation searches. But it's not just for young people, it should be for you too, professionally. These are what the sites look like when you call them up. And we encourage you to think about it once a month. Maybe you wash your car less often or more often, in which case you'll be very safe online. Use different sites and search in different ways. For example, search using your full name. So my full name is Donna Cross, so I would search in inverted commas, so it would search on Donna Cross. Apparently there's an author in the US who writes Joan of Arc books whose name is Donna Cross, so I discover. First and last names, particularly if you have an unusual name. Nicknames. My son's name is William. Apparently I'm the only person who calls him William when he leaves his clothes on the floor. Everyone else calls him Will or Willow. So if he was searching to see what his friends had posted about him, he would search under his nicknames as part of that process. And search by images as well, not just words. So look under images, and I'm sure if you've ever searched, you'll see you've got choices, different sorts of searches that you can do across the top. And also search a mobile number to see how many people know that and where it's located, and your address. So the American Academy of Pediatrics makes lots of recommendations. As parents, how often should we be letting our children spend time online? The sad thing is that the American Academy of Pediatrics put out these recommendations when we only had televisions that we needed to deal with. So we currently have no good quality empirical data that guides our decisions about how much time is safe. I'm sure Jane, with all the flight that she's doing, particularly flying west, which is a good 5 hours each way, must have somebody on the plane who asks her, oh, you work in cyber safety? Oh, my child is wanting a mobile phone. What age is the right age? The answer is we don't know. These technologies haven't been around long enough. We can make recommendations, and it looks like this might be about the right age, but we're yet to find that out. And we at Telethon Kids Institute, and I know many others, including Jane and her colleagues, are working really hard to get that information to you as quickly as possible. But what is known is that children under 2 should spend as little amount of time attached to technology as possible. We saw a potty for potty training, advertised just recently by a major toy manufacturer. I won't shame them by naming who they are, but built into the potty was an iPad. Do with it as you wish. So to finish, there's lots of things that we need to be doing as parents. Loving, spending time with our children, enjoying their company. But when we think about the digital environment, what are the things that we most need to consider? Well, keeping the devices in a safe place. You heard Giselle give lots of wonderful tips about the sorts of things that you should be doing with technology, learning how to access sites with your children, learning about privacy settings. Lots of this information is available online, and there's some great tutorials to do with your children. Googling your child's name. Don't do it as spyware. Sit down with them and do it together and enjoy and learn from each other. And if they find something that's not so nice, remember there's lots of ways that it can be taken down, and if you're really struggling, the e-Commissioner will help you with that process. And of course, if your child is experiencing some not so nice stuff online, obviously encourage them as much as possible to talk about it and to help them with the sorts of things that they can do. Keep copies of the evidence. Don't let them keep copies of it. They'll ruminate and they'll spend a lot of time looking at it. You should store examples and obviously seek help from groups like the eSafety Commissioner. And most importantly, when your children won't talk to you, and those of you who have adolescents, sometimes when they come home from school and you say, so how was your day? Like I did with my 15-year-old tonight as I rushed home to try and get dinner ready before I came out again. How was your day? No, it's okay. So what was good about your day? Well, not much. Getting a conversation out of our children, even when they're happy, can be challenging. So when your child is troubled and maybe you can tell that there's something that they're having difficulties with, most importantly, do it shoulder to shoulder, and particularly with boys. Go for a walk, take them for a drive in the car. You might have used the car to put them to sleep when they were babies. Now you use the car to get the conversation out of them. Shoulder to shoulder is really important, and obviously when you're walking in particular, young people tell us that it feels like their parents are with them in the journey, where even you might be walking around the block, but you're walking with them as part of that process. Symbolic as well as obviously not looking them in the eye directly. And of course, most importantly, treat them to be a great citizen. Online, they are the people who are going to see the bad stuff that's going on with their peers. They need to step up, be the wingman for those around them, and you need to encourage them and show them ways to do that, and obviously get them to share the sorts of things that they do most of all. So to close, what do we need to do as a parent? What are the kinds of key messages we need to be providing, both online and offline? In fact, when I even say online and offline, I'm telling you how old I am. Young people don't talk about it that way. It's just their life. But the things that we need to make sure that we're sharing with our children, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, because the fact that you've come out tonight, missed out on your dinner, rushed around to get here means you're already doing these things. But the best sorts of things that we can be, messages that we can give our children are things like, I'm interested in you. I can be a helper when you need it. I'm not always there and I'm not fixing it straight away. I'm asking them the most important question, what is it that you would like my help with? So you're giving them time to process what it is that they need. I'm consistent. I'll support you. And I'm safe. And that doesn't mean because I'm going to hit you. I'm safe because you can tell me things and I'm not going to rush off to the school and make it worse. I'll help you be party to making the decisions about the sorts of things that we should do next. Happy parenting. I wish you lots of luck in online and offline environments. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Isn't it great to have an organisation that actually uses young people to help solve a very complex issue that we have in our society? And the outcomes are fantastic, so hopefully it continues that way. So thanks very much again, Donna.